The Banshees of Inisherin is a 2022 period tragicomedy film directed, written, and co-produced by Martin McDonagh. Set on a remote, fictional island off the west coast of Ireland, the film stars Colin Farrell and Gleeson as two lifelong friends who find themselves at an impasse when one abruptly ends their relationship, with alarming consequences for both of them. Kerry Condon and Kerry Condon also star. It reunites Farrell and Gleeson, who previously worked together on McDonagh's directorial debut, in Bruges, 2008. The film had its world premiere at the 79th Venice International Film Festival on September 5, 2022, where Farrell won the Volpi Cup for Best Actor and McDonagh won the Golden Osella for Best Screenplay. It was theatrically released in Ireland, the United Kingdom, and the United States on October 21, 2022 by Searchlight Pictures. The film received widespread critical acclaim, with particular praise towards McDonagh's direction and screenplay, the performances of the cast, and Carter Burwell's score. It has grossed $50.03 million worldwide against a $20 million budget. The Banshees of Inisherin received 9 nominations at the 95th Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Farrell, Best Supporting Actor, Gleeson and Condon, Best Supporting Actress, Condon, and Best Original Screenplay. At the 80th Golden Globe Awards, it achieved 3 wins from 8 nominations: Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy, Best Actor, Musical or Comedy, Farrell, and Best Screenplay. Additionally, at the 29th Screen Actors Guild Awards, the film received 5 nominations alongside Everything Everywhere All at Once, 2022, tying the record for the most nominations, previously set by Shakespeare in Love, 1998, Chicago, 2002, and Doubt, 2008. It also won 4 BAFTA awards from 10 nominations: Outstanding British Film, Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Condon, Best Actress in a Supporting Role, Condon, and Best Original Screenplay. The film was also named one of the top 10 films of 2022 by the National Board of Review. Porrick looks in a window and sees Colm calmly sitting inside the burning building. Porrick leaves, taking Colm's dog Sammy with him. Pedar goes to Porrick's house, but is led away by Mrs. McCormick, who takes him to Dominic's corpse floating in the nearby lake. The next morning, Porrick, with Sammy, finds Colm standing on the beach beside his burned-out house. Colm apologizes for the donkey's death and suggests destroying the house has ended their war, but Porrick informs him that it only 4 of his remaining left fingers and throws them at Porrick's door. Bored of life on the island, and disgusted by Porrick and Colm's feud, Siobhan moves to the mainland for a job in a library. Porrick comes home to find his pet donkey Jenny has choked on one of Colm's fingers and died. He tracks down Colm and tells him he will burn his house down the next day at 2 p.m., regardless of whether Colm is in it. The next day Porrick sets fire to Colm's house as promised. Porrick's behavior. Porrick becomes convinced that this will make him interesting enough for Colm, and he visits Colm to confront him for being cold towards him. Colm reveals that he has finished composing his song, which he calls The Banshees of Inisherin. Porrick thinks they've come to a point of reconciliation and invites Colm to the pub, but before leaving, Porrick mentions that he lied to the fiddler to get him off the island. Instead of meeting Porrick at the pub, Colm cuts off all index finger and throwing it at Porrick's door. After Porrick sees Colm meeting with a fiddler from the mainland, Porrick tricks the fiddler into returning home by lying about his father being hit by a bread van. As the tensions worsen, local elder Mrs. McCormick warns Porrick that death will come to the island soon. Meanwhile, Siobhan sympathetically rejects Dominic's romantic advances. Porrick tells Dominic about what he did to the fiddler, and Dominic expresses his disappointment in. Though Siobhan and Dominic attempt to defuse the pair's feud, their efforts prove useless. Porrick drunkenly confronts Colm in the pub over his lack of niceness, also chastising Pedar over the fact that he molests Dominic. Colm remarks that this is the most interesting Porrick has been, and mutters, "I think I like him again now." The next morning, not remembering what he has said, Porrick attempts to apologize to Colm, but the conversation goes badly and Colm responds by cutting off his left. The local Garda, Pedar, beats his troubled and foolish son Dominic severely, and Porrick and his sister Siobhan take Dominic in for a night. While delivering milk to the market, Porrick is insulted by Pedar and retaliates by making public the fact that Pedar abuses his son. Pedar punches him to the ground. Having witnessed this, Colm puts Porrick back in his wagon and drives him home. The two do not speak. Which he will be remembered. Porrick's life is turned upside down by the loss of his friend, and he refuses to accept the rejection, but Colm only becomes more resistant to his old friend's attempts to make amends. Colm eventually gives Porrick an ultimatum: every time Porrick comes to talk with him, Colm will cut off one of his own fingers. At this point, Porrick wonders if Colm is ill. The local priest questions Colm about despair. At the tail end of the Irish Civil War in the spring of 1923, on the fictional Irish Isle of Inisherin, whose name literally translates as the Island of Ireland, folk musician and fiddler Colm Doherty abruptly begins ignoring his lifelong best friend and drinking Buddy Porrick's Williabane. Colm has decided that Porrick, dubbed one of life's good guys and respected by the Islanders, is too dull for him, and he would rather spend the remainder of his life composing music and doing things for. Would have ended if he had stayed inside the house. When Colm comments that he hasn't heard rifle fire from the mainland recently and wonders if the Civil War is coming to an end, Porrick replies that he is sure the fighting will begin again soon because some things there's no moving on from, and I think that's a good thing. As Porrick turns to leave, Colm thanks him for looking after Sammy. Anytime, Porrick responds. Unbeknownst to them, Mrs. McCormick is observing them from a distance. As of April 26, 2023, the Banshees of Inisherin has grossed $10.6 million in the United States and Canada, and $38.5 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $50.3 million. In the film's opening weekend in the US, it made $184,454 from 4 theaters, for a per-venue average of $46,113, making it the second highest grossing opener for a fall 2022 platform release, behind Till. The following weekend the film expanded to 58 theaters, making $535,170. The following weekend it expanded to 895 theaters, making $2.1 million, and finishing 7th at the box office. These results were attributed to the increasing change in audience behavior towards prestige films in a moviegoing environment altered by the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, where moviegoers would refuse to see and support these particular titles in favor of franchise and straightforward horror films. Upon its return to theaters during the weekend of January 27, 2023, following the Academy Award nomination announcements, it rose 383% domestically. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 96% of 353 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of August 7, 10. The website's consensus reads, featuring some of Martin McDonagh's finest work and a pair of outstanding lead performances, The Banshees of Inisherin is a finely crafted feel-bad treat. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 87 out of 100, based on 62 critics, indicating universal acclaim. Peter Bradshaw from The Guardian gave the film 4 out of 5 stars, writing that as a study of male loneliness and swallowed anger it is weirdly compelling and often very funny. Todd McCarthy from Deadline Hollywood wrote that the film was a simple and diabolical tale of a friendship's end shot through with bristling humor and sudden moments of startling violence. He also praised Ben Davis's cinematography and Carter Burwell's score. David Ehrlich from IndieWire rated it B+, writing that its constant undercurrent of humor affords the story's most pressing questions an appropriately ridiculous context, one that speaks to the absurdities of all existence. He also called it McDonagh's best work since In Bruges. Matthew Krythe from Screen Rant noted the film's demonstration of the metaphorical aspects of civil disobedience and internal protest between a set of individuals is remarkably hilarious. The New York Times' Kyle Buchanan wrote, the film was rapturously received here in Venice, earning a lengthy standing ovation and rave reviews. In a review for Variety, Guy Lodge wrote, what begins as a doleful, anecdotal narrative becomes something closer to mythic in its rage and resonance. McDonagh has long fixated on the most visceral, vengeful extremes of human behavior, but never has he formed something this sorely heartbroken from that fascination. David Rooney, from The Hollywood Reporter, called the film a ruminative ensemble piece that expertly balances the tragicomic with the macabre, inhabiting territory adjacent to McDonagh's stage work yet also sweepingly cinematic. Robbie Collin of The Telegraph awarded it 5/5 stars and described it as an often shoulder-shudderingly funny film, whose comic dialogue is dazzlingly designed and performed. Conversely, Mark Feeney, writing for the Boston Globe, gave an unenthusiastic review, describing it as a short story trying to be a novel and calling the metaphor for the Irish Civil War awfully flat-footed. Several critics took issue with the film's portrayal of Ireland. Mark O'Connell from Slate criticized the characters in the film for what he considered their portrayal of Irishness, and noted that this aspect of the film might pass non-Irish critics, writing that it's worth noting, though maybe not surprising, that international critics have failed to take issue with its deployment of the hoariest Irish stereotypes. Ed Power of The Telegraph considered that underneath its quiet man curlicues, a much better movie strains for freedom, and was disappointed that McDonagh chose to shroud his character study in hackneyed Paddyisms. The Spectator's Joy Porter attacked the insidious falsehood perpetuated by this film about her home country's history of partition and civil war, summarizing it as a beautifully staged but dangerously ahistorical and misleading film. John Waters, however, praised the film in his review for First Things for taking the kitschified, cliched landscape of Ireland and handing it back to itself, cleansed. Most Irish writers and artists simply run away from the tainted iconography, but McDonagh cleans it off and kisses it, redeeming it with a new meaning in which the irony is both present and transcended, he continued.